Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacek Utko. As you see on the map, I was working for several countries in Central Europe, Russia, and Scandinavia for more than 15 years for a Swedish publisher, Bonnier. And when I was starting, these papers were not in a very good condition when it comes to design, editorial. After a few years, we managed to develop them to the actually world-class level. I want to share today with you some ideas that I believe in about the future of the press, of the media, of the magazines, of the websites. I think it's high time to give powers to designers. The first idea, to recognize the trend, don't fight with the trend. There's one thing going on in media now. When you look at some magazines like Newsweek, Newsweek doesn't want to be newsy anymore. It wants to be more timeless, more opinionated, more black and white, slower reading. So we can assume that the weekly magazines wants to be more like monthlies now, and monthlies are already so much sophisticated, complicated products that look like photo albums, like books. And naturally, newspapers will copy from weekly magazines. And at the end of this, the websites will have to learn a lot from newspapers to finally replace them in the future. So I would say the future of the newspapers is the magazine style. And this is the thing I more and more believe in. When I'm working on the newspapers, some new designs, new concepts, I'm not looking for inspiration in the other newspapers anymore. They're totally boring. I think the newspapers, when it comes to business, are not dead yet. But when it comes to concept, are totally dead. I'm not finding anything interesting there. So what I'm looking now is magazines. The GQ, American magazine, I'm reading on a monthly basis. Esquire magazine, Wired for some new modern approaches, and of course, business magazines are very interesting sources of inspiration, both design and editorial. Fortune magazine and Bloomberg Business Week magazine. So the magazine style we look for is working with spreads, 2 pages, not just one single page. It's about more creative editorial formats than we have in newspapers. It's about higher quality of design elements, high quality of print. It's more visual and less newsy, because news is not the future. A trend for print media is less newsy. News will be somewhere else. So we need less news, we need more knowledge. The reader is going to be smarter, not just well-informed. And for this, we need new journalism, creative journalism. Not just simple news reporting. News is old. It was yesterday on the website. Investigative story is too expensive. Who can afford it now? So we must be more creative. What we do now is reactive journalism. Our newsrooms remind me barking dogs. When nobody is coming along the fence, the dogs are sleeping. When somebody is walking, the dogs are barking. These are newsrooms. We are reacting on some stupid politician says something, yeah, some accident, some natural disaster. We are reacting. We come in the morning and looking, oh, what's the agenda for today? Let's do something. It's not about this. We have to be more relevant. We have to there are many topics that people want to read about because they're relevant for their lives. And it doesn't matter if some politician said something about it or not. So we have to be more useful. We have to do more newspapers than newspapers. And of course, we can't do creative design without creative journalism. So we can't just repackage the boring content and make it look nicer. For this, we need new editorial formats. There is a pointer savers, actually a few years old, the typical prototype of the American news page. This is classical one, photo, headline, text. The second one is more visual. They added some map and boxes. And the third one is still different, more like a set of small chapters on the topic. You don't have to read it from the top to the bottom. Your eye is jumping from the place to place. They ask 3 groups of people, what do you remember from the text? And the third group remembered twice as much information from the text. So it means that the old model of the newspaper we're doing is not effective anymore. The non-linear bite-sized chunk of information increases understanding of the text. This is the new perception of the human being now. And what we're doing is the 19th century model of the newspaper. We live in a SMS Twitter world, 160 character generation. This is the limit of a perception of the young people. Or Facebook, yeah? I was trying to put more ones, I can't. 420 signs, that's it. Young people don't use email, they have other ways of communication. I'm working with some young guys from other countries. I can't email them stuff, I have to Skype them some files. I have to Facebook them some messages about business. Yeah, they don't have email address. That's how they think. So small visual forms rule. This is the perception in 2012 of the young people. Do we see reflection of this in our print media? Yeah, partly yes. But many of the great newspapers, noble newspapers, still look like this. We have 3D TVs, we have so much new technology, and we're still producing the products that look like this. It's quite amazing, isn't it? We have tools. We have fixed editorial elements at the top of the page, and we're using quite a lot, like quotes, like some ups and downs, heroes of the day, graphics, figures. We have free-floating editorial elements that are not like a typical text, but a little bit more visual. We have boxes. I usually design a system of boxes to the newspaper when I design it, and you can put some graphs, tables, photos, make it a little bit more interesting. We have all these entry points to the text, like figures and quotes. But we really don't treat it very seriously in the newsrooms. We treat it more like a decoration, both designers and editors. But for the young people, it can be a main source of information. So what we can learn from magazines? We have to learn writing short. We have to learn more visual journalism. They are very good in presenting stories in a very short and visual way. But we can also learn how to write long, how to be patient in explaining the long, complicated stories to the readers. We have to learn balance between long and short. So don't be too fast or don't be too boring. We have to learn the sense of humor, of distance to yourself. We don't have it. We are too boring, too serious in newspapers. We have to learn to care for details. We are too fast, we are too careless in newspapers. And we have to learn the listings. This is actually an amazing invention that I'm using quite a lot. The listings with numbers. They divide the content into small chunks of information with numbers. And they just do it everywhere. Actually, once I was trying to find some good examples for short forms in magazines, and I looked through magazines like Monocle, GQ, Esquire, and I found out that most of the samples I found are listings with numbers. They're just numbering everything. They cut the content into sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they do it like all over the magazine. It's quite amazing. And many of these samples actually the numbers are quite small, so it turns to me that this is not only about the design, it's about more the structure of information for the editors, for the newsrooms, then not just readers. We have to learn about section openings. Section opening is very visual, very attractive, but also contains some content. It's selling the story already. And we have to learn about intelligent covers. And I'm not talking about the covers like this, even though I love this magazine, I'm reading it a lot. Here I can learn a lot about photography for the edition, how to put a lot of promos around the photo. But I'm more thinking about the way of selling the story in a more poster-style way. So I would suggest you to look at the social political magazines and business magazines. They're actually the best in selling the stories in this way. The Estonian newspaper. We care a lot about putting promos on the front page, but the main accent must be strong in magazine style. So it's obvious which story is the best, and we don't put too much text in this. We just sell the story in a very strong visual element. We play with typography. Like you see here, the slab type of fonts are now kind of trendy. We're using it more and more. We're putting a lot of small editorial elements throughout the page. The medical newspapers. I made a series of medical newspapers in Scandinavia and Central Europe, I think like 6 or 7 countries. The very boring content, specialized newspapers, and it was really hard to make it look interesting. And we came up with an idea that actually almost every story is a spread. So put as many spreads as we could into this content and put a lot of illustration to this. Here you see how many spreads we made in the small newspaper. And also, of course, we put a lot of editorial elements on the page. So this is very magazine feeling for this type of content. Another business paper in Poland. We try to make it more feeling conservative and credible for the business audience. So we cared a lot about typography and the small details, so make it look more elegant and luxury. But it doesn't mean that we don't have a crazy idea on the front page. We still have these bold, crazy ideas on the front page. And we have fun putting it. It's very much spread-oriented, very magazine style, very horizontal. So you just read page. There are many spreads in this newspaper. We read page by page like a magazine. It has a lot of bold graphics. This is navigation. And of course, a lot of elements on the top of the page. This is an interesting sample, newspaper from Russia. This is, I show you some prototype screens because this is very fresh design. Quite revolutionary. They say they don't want to have short news, no briefs, just long stories. The short news are on the web. We have only long stories. It's quite interesting. So this newspaper looks really like a magazine reading. As you see, wider columns and smaller columns, a lot of half columns with empty spaces. We play with all these design elements, vertical quotes. We really have fun here. A lot of white space. A lot of fixed editorial elements. Look at the colors, they're very bold and brave. This is actually a good example. The old page is on the left, the new page is on the right. So that's the way how we managed to make it look more magazine. And when newspapers are magazine style, then the magazines have to be even more magazine. This is our weekend edition of the magazine we're doing. We're playing with the typography in an eclectic way, the old styles with the new modern layouts. So we're not afraid to put huge photos on big spreads. A lot of work on the photo edition here. And the contrast of big and small. That's basically what the page composition is all about. And of course, we all are inspired by the globalization, and we go to conferences, look at other people's work, and the papers in Latin America are kind of similar to European papers, and people in Asia look at the American stuff. But okay, we have to get inspired, but also remember about the local roots and some national features and flavors. And I show you one example from a small country in Europe, Lithuania. The designer that works with me there is doing the covers for the section, for the weekend section. He draws everything, make headlines and illustration and design them himself. And this is something that you can tell when you know a little bit the history of graphic design, that this comes from this part of Europe. It's kind of in line with the school of poster design of northern Baltic countries. And believe me, these pages are mostly like one-day work. So I have to cherish this kind of designers, because this is the they build the image of the whole publication. Another example comes from Sweden. These guys, for the weekend edition of the magazine, come up with very interesting ideas for the cover of the front page. They didn't put just simple photo and headline. They tried to be more creative and more poster style, selling the content. Another thing is the rhythm. I think we have to really work more with the rhythm. This is the common mistake of the designers, flat rhythm. They care a lot about the page composition, typography, but they don't really care about how is the experience of reading of the publication. And I believe the newspaper is like music, and also magazine is like music, with the rhythm, with ups and downs and tempo. And flipping through pages is something that I'm responsible for. I have to design this experience. So I'm usually sketching this kind of graph showing how when the temperature goes up, when the temperature goes down. But we can do even more. We can design like Mozart, like a symphony. Let's imagine the newspaper is a symphony. So actually in the symphony we have two musical elements, volume and tempo. Volume is about is it loud or not, piano, forte, fortissimo, and so on. And the tempo is about the speed. So you can imagine that some parts of the newspaper can be loud and slow, or low and fast. And you can really play with these elements together. So I made up very funny buttons to turn. And for instance, you can have, the tempo is about speed of reading, the number of and length of text. So you can have very short text and a lot of text. The speed of reading is very high, yeah? But if you have a long one text on the page, the speed of reading is very slow, like in music, yeah? And on the other side, in volume, the size of headlines and visuals, yeah? The bigger fonts, the bigger photos, the volume rises, yeah? And the smaller, the volume goes down. So we can really play with those two things, and you can imagine, visualize your newspaper like you actually playing the music. I think it's really good experience, good exercise, just to look at your paper. Are you really using this contrast just to be more interesting, to provide a more interesting experience for your reader? And this is kind of like a 3D, yeah, the third dimension of what we're doing in design. And I spend weeks planning the structure, planning the rhythm of the newspaper when I'm redesigning, and also on an everyday production when I used to work as an art director in the newspaper. I was spending 1 to 2 hours planning this in the newsroom. And this is a very old photo. Look at my hair. This photo is 15 years old. I'm still keeping it just to show the people that I'm doing this for 15 years, and I didn't change the method of doing it. Of course, this board now is much more, is better looking now and more advanced. But 15 years ago, we started doing, and do it now, sketching page by page in a very analog way, very primitive way, on the board on the wall, using a marker, during the meeting with editor, designer, infographic artist, photo editor. And this is a public event, not in a closed room, so everyone can take part of it, and can throw idea, I can discuss if this is the topic for the front page or not, or how we can illustrate this thing. And the other thing is that we are very precise in planning, very precise in planning. I'm basically drawing a headline placement and the photo size and the box when I'm talking to the editor, what it's about. So he's telling me the story, what it's about, how can we illustrate it, who is the hero of this, what kind of data we can have. And we are coming up to the common idea. And I'm learning the content, I'm becoming an expert from editorial point of view, and he's learning my visual point of view. So after a few years, in the beginning I was drawing all the pages myself. 2 or 3 years later, I started to come in the morning and half of the pages are drawn already because the editor can do it well. And now actually they do it almost themselves. So this is the perfect learning opportunity, learning process for editors. Very cheap investment, just probably a few $100s. Put something on the wall, buy markers, make these meetings every day, every morning, and also helps with your discipline because you can look for deadlines, yeah? Because then when you have all these pages sketched, you put the ready pages printed on it, yeah? You can see immediately, yeah, okay, this is ready, this is not ready. But the deadline is 3 p.m., what about this page? So it's really like very simple tool, and this tool, I'm afraid, can't be replaced with any editorial system, any online and digital system, because this works so much better analog like it works now. Of course, we can have headlines and photo sizes to show it. By the page architecture is very important. I'm an architect by education, so I'm really keen on this. So I'm trying to find some structure of the page that helps me to provide the content. The horizontal structures now is very modern. As you see, the vertical one looks a little bit old, so we use it less and less. We try to fix some elements at the top of the page or the top or the bottom of the page. Or we try to make some L shape on the page, especially on some section openings, just to make for the reader a stronger impression that something new starts in the newspaper. And we play a lot with the grid, with the vertical grid. As you see, there are some half columns with empty white space, but we put into this space some editorial elements. So it's a good discipline thing for the editors, just to put more entry points to the story. In this example, you can see different column sizes on the left column and on the right column. For the main story, it's a wider one. For the supplemental story, it's a smaller one. So also create some kind of hierarchy on the page. And all these half columns, like in this medical newspaper, was a great disciplining element for the editors to put some additional element from the text to highlight this element. And at the end, using this system for the boring medical papers, we can up with very dynamic, very interesting presentation for this series of medical newspapers. Because future is ordered. When you look at the old newspapers 20, 30 years ago, there was a total mess, no order. But now even bad newspapers are more and more ordered. The grid is everywhere, and it's going to be even more. My friend designer says that he's not even starting to design the business card without the grid. And the future is eclectic. When you look at what's going on in the design, like interior design, architecture, fashion, there's a constant meeting of old and new, modern and classical things. The fashion, Alexander McQueen, John Galliano, Valentino, old and new. So taking some old classical elements and put it to the new structures. And we have to do the same in design, newspaper design. One of my favorite musicians, Bob McFerrin, pop, jazz, classics. He mixes everything, yeah? So we live in great times now. We can mix everything, and everything is possible. A few years ago, someone told me, oh, Jacek, this is probably too magazine, and I was concerned. Now, yes, great, great. It can't be too much magazine. It can't be too much poster. It can be, the inspiration is everywhere. You can't just look at the newspapers, your competition, and try to do something better. No, you have to look in a total different area to get inspired, to just go above this and solve the problem from the total different level. So that's what I'm doing. I'll show you some approaches to the eclectic design, of course, from the magazines. This is Fortune magazine by John Korpick. As you see, he mixes quite modern fonts with a little bit traditional fonts to make the impression. And here is very good illustration, like some traditional elements in typography, and these flags are combined with the ultra-modern graphics. And that's basically what we're doing. We try to make an impression of something classical, traditional, luxury, conservative with typography, plus add some ultra-modern elements on the pages. Another example comes from Bloomberg Businessweek. Richard Turley, my friend, very good designer. He made a very, very simple and consistent design, basically using 2 fonts only. It's a very homogenic design. But on the top of it, there is a layer of crazy design elements, you know, and they really sometimes push the limits of what they do in the newspaper, and they really play well and have fun with all this. So these are 2 ways that you can do this. And basically, if you want to simplify this thought, the eclectic design now is a conservative typography and the modern layouts, modern design elements on the page. That's how we do it in newspapers. So we try to find some traditional-looking font, but surrounded by quite modern visual elements on the page. This is quite a good example. We're not afraid of looking more historical, conservative on our covers. So again, if it's 2 magazine, I don't care. It's great. Do graphics without designers. This is small things, but very important because of the crisis. So some years ago, we were doing these pages easily, yeah? I remember some conference in America 3, 4, 5 years ago. They were telling me about making a spread for the newspaper that took half a year, 10 people, and the budget. You know, they have a team for this. They're working for half a year. That printed it one day, and the next day it's gone. Yeah, that's what we were doing 5 years ago in America, in Europe, everywhere. But these times are over. Yeah, it's too expensive. Just no one can afford it. So now it's time for doing something else. The minimum designing and the maximum editing. So when you look at the infographic, let's say infographic or box, the more editing work and the less design work, the better. I like this kind of approach. So basically, we should do most of the elements without using this Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator software. Yeah? It should be just done on the page when you lay out the newspaper. Very simple way. Just take some photos and text. Even this timeline can be done without Designer. This is done, all of this is done in InDesign without Illustrator, just simple bars and figures and combined photos. Very simple ideas. And I suggest you to look at the Italian newspapers. They are not very good when it comes to general design, typography. They're quite conservative and old, but they're great in making spreads. And on the spread, they put a lot of very simple editorial elements, selling the story in a very simple, cheap, cost-effective way. This is really, I suggest you to buy some of these publications and just learn from this. So learn from Italians, not only about how to beat Germans. Sell the story. The role of design is basically grab attention and help to digest the information. And we all tend to ignore the reader's perception. Same old mistakes. Too long text, yeah. Editors can understand that too long people don't read, and no entry points. And at the top of it, no consistency between headline and photo. So another survey from Pointer: the longer the story, the smaller part of the story is read. Some survey from Germany: only 7% of the text in the newspaper is actually read. So 93% of the texts are skipped. Why it happens? Of course, it's because of digital evolution and topics, not relevant, but also because of our model of working. When the writing and editing, this traditional method, takes so much time that we don't have time really for presentation. We don't have this last look on the page before sending it to the printing house, just to ask the question, okay, do I really understand the story? Is it really sold in the best way? Are the most important things easy to digest for the reader? I've seen many great stories that were not sold in the proper way because we lack this last 15, 20 minutes just to tune it before sending it to the printing house. And designers and editors don't care how the story reads. Yeah, both designers and editors. They don't care about the consistency between the relation between the headline and the photo. The logic of reading is the box in the right place and it is on the right content, how it's complementary to the story. There's no usability of reading in print. The only people that really care for the reader's perception is the guys from the yellow press, yeah? From this cheap yellow press, like Bild type of publications. These guys really care about the reader. They really think, okay, do they see this headline? When they start reading, what they understand? They make tests, they make surveys, they constantly ask your reader about. So the serious newspapers really lost contact with the reader. Only these guys still have the contact with the reader. Maybe that's why they don't lose so much circulation. So who's killing newspapers? The editors. They are writing for themselves, for their friends, for the group of... And designers, yeah? They are too much like artists. They don't care about the content. They don't read their own newspaper. And we have a constant war between them. Yeah, I've seen it in many places. I was actually part of this war for many years too. Break the walls in the newsroom. The real walls and the mental walls. The future belongs to content-driven designers and the visual editors. That's what we need to find, this kind of teams. Yeah? John Lennon, Paul McCartney, working together, and at the end of the day, I don't remember if the idea was coming from editor or from designer. Maybe I made this headline. Many times the headline came, for the award-winning pages, came from me. I made the best headlines, yeah? Better than editors. But many times editors come with the idea for the design in the morning, and I just follow it up because it was so good. So this is really a real pleasure of working, just to find a guy or a group of guys that really are not afraid of each other, yeah, and want to learn. I learn a lot about. I have many editorial skills now after years of working in newspapers, and I know many editors that are really good as a visual thinker now. So, but they need to have a space to work together. Yeah, they need to have some kind of environment that is actually promoting this kind of activities. So we need to give more power to designers, because designers are a little bit suppressed group now, except for some other branches. As you see, in some companies, they are not suppressed. They are actually very important. As I remember, Johnson, I've recently said that actually all these ideas that Steve Jobs is coming up with are his ideas. Yeah, Steve Jobs just took it from him. Another good example, the guy who is the CEO of Nike, and some people say the most creative CEO in the world, he's the designer. He was designing shoes, and now he's a CEO. So when you look back, really, like 5 years ago, when you look at the cell phones you had or other things, it was really not so important as now. It was really different. The world changed a lot. And now, without design, look at some companies like Samsung, how much money they put to design. Like, without design, now you can sell anything. And we are in the newspapers, in the press, can be just an island, isolated island. So in many publications I work, the art director is on the level of the deputy editor-in-chief, but the future is even more scary because in many magazines, the art director is on the level of editor-in-chief. So this cooperation with a designer that has a lot of power and also a lot of responsibility is the future, and you have to somehow face it. And of course, the biggest tool we still have is the redesign tool. The old question, can design sell newspaper? And the answer, no. Of course, design cannot sell newspapers yet. We need something more. We need strategy, we need content, and design together to sell newspapers. Because this is a business process. It's not about the colors. It's not about the fonts. I never start designing without believing in strategy, without working on the strategy together with the business people. Then I work with editors on the content. And then, usually after a month or two, I start designing, not before. Because we want to change the product. We don't want to just refresh the look of the newspaper. We want to change the product, and we want to make it consistent. The secret is to make consistent strategy, content, and design. So you have some brief coming from the strategy. You make some typical business SWOT analysis. Look at the market, look at the competition, look at your strength and weak points. Then you go to the content, what should be changed according to their strategy on the market. And then at the end, you look at design to make design that is reflecting the strategy and the content. We not just make design because, okay, I like the blue color now, and I find some nice font, and I want to make it this way. Yeah? No, design must reflect the strategy and content brief. And that's how we did it many years ago, the first time in this Polish newspaper. And as you see, after some years of struggling, this paper started to grow. 12, 22, 35% growth. Same in other countries, Lithuania, even in Austria. In Russia, very similar, 28% after 3 years. And in Bulgaria, even the circulation had doubled after a year. But it didn't happen just because design was nice. Yeah? We have some other idea. Inner branding. To sell idea to the workers. Yeah? Not just talk to the CEO and editor-in-chief in a closed room. Just try to sell the idea of change to all the workers. And then engage all the departments, circulation, sale, advertisement, not just designers and editors, and let them contribute. They will tell you a lot of information about the paper that the editor-in-chief and CEO will never tell you, because maybe they even don't know this. Then they start to believe in the product. Yeah? They start to believe in the new mission, the new strategy. And they are very motivated, very much involved into this. And you will see the results. The results in Bulgaria, for instance, this double circulation after a year, came because we came with an idea of clean news. We had a spot showing the shirt after laundry that is white and clean. And in Bulgaria, when there's a lot of corruption and the media are a little bit like connected to some lobbies and oligarchs, this kind of newspaper was a cool thing, and these young people working in the telemarketing, calling the clients, they think that it's a cool place to work for. And they really were so much engaged. And they really, basically, they made this result. It's not my design. They made this double circulation because they believed in the new idea of the newspaper. Crisis? Okay, these results I showed you before were like a few years old. What about crisis? You don't know what is crisis, but we in Europe know what is crisis. We redesign again. And I like crisis because crisis filters bad ideas. There are many things that we can't afford to do anymore, so we have to stick to the stuff that is really effective. It's mostly, in the bad times, I was asked to do the design for slightly less people and slightly less pages. And that was really tough. We did a design like this for this Polish newspaper again, because our owners were kind of scared 2 years ago that the situation will be really not very, very bright. So let's cut some stuff and some pages and make it safe. But we said, okay, let's not just give the signal to the readers that we are shrinking. So we, again, try to reinvent every page, every section, and try to make it even more relevant. Okay, we have to cut two pages, so let's make these remaining pages even more relevant, better for the readers. And we did even without the big focus group and big research. We just basically called some group of friends and some people that were connected to the newspaper, asking for opinion. Yeah, what kind of data you want on this page with the stock market? And after a few months, we came up with a really good ideas. There was the middle of the crisis. The results of the readership of all the national newspapers in Poland were quite depressing. Yeah, the leader was -2%, and most of the guys were like -37, 34%. That was really like a bad year for the newspapers. And only one paper that shrinked had a big plus, like our newspaper. And then a bit later, we checked the advertising revenues. Still, some papers are struggling, -37, but you see some kind of positive figures already, +8, +7%, and the one newspaper is clearly on plus in this time. So it's not about the number of pages, it's not about the number of sections you are printing. It's about relevance of the pages you're giving to your readers. Use advantages of print. We all know this chart. One brand, many channels. And we believe that the main platforms we are producing are different, but in reality, what we're giving to our readers is actually the same. The same 19th century paradigm, headline, text, and photo. So basically, in many places, I've seen it, and it's quite amazing. The print digital strategy is giving the same the day later and charge for this. That's why I, newspaper lover, resigned to subscribe my local newspaper, because they give me the same stuff the day later. I can read it online for free. And they don't even make an effort to give a little bit more, like some sub-stories, some new photo. No, even the headlines are the same. So I just decided not to buy it anymore. And more readers will make the same decisions. So really, this is a crucial thing, just to not give the same stuff online and print. And there are many strategies for this. How to make people pay, or how to make a different content here and different content there. So I was a little bit afraid when I heard the word replica in your presentations, because it's not about replica. It's about some two channels that has to somehow be distinguished. Yeah. So giving the same stuff the day later for money is suicide. So we have to find out and print something what is unique. And of course, there are many things that are unique in newspapers, magazines. I find one thing that I'm working on a daily basis, the multi-layered storytelling. It's very simple. It's about making a spread with the one headline, an intro story, and many sub-headlines, sub-stories, quotes, comments, opinions, photos, graphics. It's not complicated from design point of view. Even an editor can make a structure of this page. In my opinion, it's actually the fastest way to digest a lot of information so far. You can't make such a fast, consume so much information online yet, because you have to click a lot of links. And here, after a few seconds, you read the headlines, and you know if this is the relevant content for you or not. And after just 2-3 minutes, you probably can read some of it and already know a lot of information. So this is a very competitive thing. And I guess you can find many things like this in the newspapers. So don't try to copy online. Don't try to be the same as internet. Our model of making headline, text, and photo, they already own it. It's not ours anymore. So don't do the same. Try to be different. Try to find what is the strength of the platform, what is the strength of the print platform, and print something that they can't do online. Otherwise, nobody will want to buy you. And there are many moments that actually you are better than web. There's one thing that is obviously better, and it's connected with the big weakness of the website. It's a template design. The websites can change only when they know, when there's some inclusive news, when they know in advance they have to change, like Obama inauguration. Yeah? But in a daily basis, they can't change. It's just technology limitations are so big that they just really can't do what we do in print. We break the template every day, even few times a day. I sometimes was making 2, 3 versions of the front page in the newspaper when I was working there. And we have a lot of fun. We play with the white space, with the headlines, with the photography. This is a very nice sample. The world is falling apart. It's just the first days of the crisis, and this domino flag, different countries, and at the end is the Polish flag, and we're just waiting how it's going to end up. Very often we use simple bold graphics. Just few figures is enough when the message is strong to make the full cover out of it. We sometimes pretend to be a sport newspaper. It's about business. We lost another investment of the car industry to some other country like Czechoslovakia. So we treat it as a sport match, Poland against Czech and Slovakia, 0-3. When in the parliament, 300 people voted against the business, we call them 325 populists. Panics on the stock market. We use a lot of graphics on the pages. Here we think if we get something out of the Euro 2012, Poland and Ukraine. This is the result of election in Poland that all the editorial team was very sad with the results, so we decided not to say a word on the headline, on the cover. Speechless. So a lot of magazine style of things like this. This is a poster style. We're just counting time, 100 days until Poland joins the European Union. Discover about the bees. This is very interesting design-wise. Some company on the stock market that it was constantly losing, but it was such a hypnotic to the players that they were keep on buying, and everybody was talking and asking about it. So we come up with this kind of design idea to show the mental situation with this weird company on the stock market. This is very nice. Hazard. In many of these pages, like for instance, like this page, I didn't do it. My coworker did it. I'm quite envy. I would like to do this page, but he did it. And many people from different small countries are doing this kind of pages. People I work with. After a year, 2, 3, they can easily do this kind of page. So it's quite amazing that this concept is not some magic. Yeah, you can really implement it and execute it in elsewhere. And believe me, in some countries, like if I work in a Baltic country that have 2, 3 million people, the job market is very narrow. So I have to work with a designer that I have on site. I can't just look for people that are super talented on the market. So we have to work with these people that are not very talented. And at the end, we come up with a team that is actually executing our idea of making front pages. All the faces of President Putin. This is very funny. McDonald's winning in the crisis over the sushi bars in Poland. And some matches producer, the only matches produced in Latvia, the factory is burned, so now they don't have any producer of the matches. Okay, so that's how we do it. And it's really 3-4 hours, sometimes just one day, but really most of these pages we just made it on a daily basis, few hours. It's a very tight budget. We don't spend too much money on the illustration and photos and visuals. And I think that this is very competitive because this kind of thing, this art direction and news presentation on the web doesn't exist yet. So it's a competitive advantage. Design is a competitive advantage. This is something that makes us different from the website so far. Of course, they are making progress. You have to be aware of this. But so far, we are better. And there are moments that web can learn from print. When I look at the websites, I have a problem with feeling the importance of the news, the hierarchy of the information, the problem with feeling this news fever. I have to refer to the newspaper to just really know that this is important news and something important happened. I don't feel it on the website. And I was really lucky to be last year in London during the Online Publishers Summit on the same day when the Chilean miners were released from underground. Remember the story? They were underground, and then they released them, like several people in Chile, the miners. There was a great story, you know? And the same day I had the presentation. And I showed the website how they sell the story. And it's really amazing, you know, how they couldn't sell the story, such a great story. The BBC, this is a template, yeah? They have only this space for the photo and headline. They can't do anything more. The Times, slightly better, but still kind of boring. Looks like something like kind of like printed newspaper, not online presentation. And you have to go up north to Sweden to see some emotions, to see some fever of the news, and even more up north to Norway, UK websites. I prefer this tabloid presentation because you can see the emotions, yeah? You can see the tears and joy of the people that were rescued and their families. This is a true journalism. Another example from Norway, you can see the face of the guy that was rescued. You can see nothing on the other photos. And this is an amazing example. When I showed this in London, the guys from Independent were really laughing at themselves because they had a template at this time. They didn't let them to put a photo to the main story. So on this day, you can see some headline which actually doesn't say much, and you see the whale and some bikers, yeah, on the front page. That's how they can manage, how they can deal with such a story on the front page. And this is a strategy for the websites, but this is good news for the print. The template is killing websites, and of course newspapers during this day didn't have any problem with showing emotions and selling the stories. And I'm showing you newspapers, like small newspapers from around the world. Didn't have any problem with selling the story. So news is about emotion. And art direction and news presentation on the web doesn't exist. And this is our competitive advantage. There are some people that are actually thinking and try to do better, like Huffington Post. And I see more and more this kind of thinking on the website. So it looks like these guys are learning slowly how to make a bold presentation, how to not put 50 stories at once, just to make a decision, editorial decision, what is important this day, just to try to show that we know what is important. We tell you what actually you should read today. But these are just first examples of this. So far, I think that magazines really work on iPad. It's a great tool for them. I'm reading this magazine like on a monthly basis. I'm subscribed to it. It's amazing. But I don't read any newspaper because I don't find it interesting. These guys are trying too hard, give me some headlines every day, but I don't want to click. You know, I really don't want to read it. I think the newspapers for iPad is not still the good idea, especially the newspapers that are like a replica of the print publications. We've done a lot of this in our Swedish publisher, Bonnier. Actually, the Bonnier was a leader on this market. They come up with a Mac Plus and then News Plus platform for this. They work very closely with Adobe on this, and they were working on many of these applications. And I must say that this is not a success. It just doesn't work. Some example from Sweden, the paper that is actually the crown in this holding that brings so much money and has so much circulation, like 150,000 circulation in Sweden, the very high-profile audience. They were able to sell I think only a few hundreds iPad versions at the same time. So it doesn't bring any money, doesn't bring any circulation. It brings costs. So that's why a lot of people now are looking at the hybrid solution, the solution that is outside of Apple Store. So you also save this 30%. This is like Financial Times application, which is like a web application outside of the App Store. And it's actually quite a good solution, in my opinion, because it's kind of like combination of the website and the iPad thing. And many of our newspapers now are thinking about this solution to go this way because it's very cheap production-wise. And this can be actually the future of the iPad newspapers. The iPad newspapers don't work, and it's a good news for print. Many publishers just realized that maybe we have to deal with the print, with the paper for several more years. We can buy some more time. But the question is what we do this time. Are we just waiting? Are we doing really something productive? How print media respond to a crisis so far? They cut costs. And of course, this is good. We have to cut costs. We have to be reasonable. But they don't talk about the business model. They don't talk about the product. They talk about the printed newspaper. They only talk about repackaging some content, sell it somewhere else, find some new client for some supplement to make a little bit more money with the existing product. They don't talk about the future. Any other branch knows clearly what's going to be the future. Any other products knows exactly what's going to be in 3-5 years. They have products in the drawers waiting for the competition or for the market moves. Do we know? No. We have no idea. I'm talking to many publishers. They have no idea what's going to be in the future. It looks like the iPad is the only future prototype of the newspaper. There's no idea what to do with the paper in the future. And I'm really amazed by this. I think I'm asking a question, why don't we work on the print prototype of the future newspaper? We can't do much more tricks, business marketing, whatever, even design tricks about these products and make it look slightly better, refreshed, and make better results in this market. Especially you can see it in America, you can see it in Europe, when the crisis is really like pushing one paper after another from the market. There are many cities in America that don't have a city newspaper anymore. So we can't really pretend that nothing's going on. We have to ask some tough questions. Yeah? What's going to be the newspaper of the future? Is it really going to be as big, as thick as now? Is it really going to be million circulation as now? I don't think so. Is it really going to be daily? I'm not sure about it. We have to ask these questions. Yeah? Is it going to be magazine style? Is it going to be less newsy because news is going to be somewhere else? It's going to be more niche, not just general news about sport, finance, and everything. These are questions we have to ask about. And we have to make some vision. What's going to be in 5 years? What's going to be in 10 years? Are we still going to have a paper? And if yes, then how are we going to look like? And at the end, I have to end with an anecdote from my friend Andreas that, as you know, helped very much to brought me here. I had this anecdote in Bali 2 years ago, and I think it really illustrates very, very well our situation. When you look at when you put the frog into the pot with the water, with the cold water, and put this water on the stove, and try to heat it up, the frog is sitting inside the pot and it actually feels good. It slowly adjusts to the temperature, until it's too late, until it dies. And I think it's a good illustration of our situation of analog printed media surrounded by the digital revolution, by all the changes that's going on. We still think that we can somehow be fine. We don't make big moves. We don't make revolutionary moves. We still feel quite okay. The profits are still there. The circulation is quite okay. And looks like that we can really be the frog very soon. So please don't be a frog. Thank you very much.